From Anshe Spar Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parashat Shemini. When we look at different aspects of various books of the Torah, particularly the books that contain the story of the Jewish people as a whole, books that contain the laws of the Torah, Shemot, Vayikra, and Bamidbar. If we look at these three books, we can discern that each is a separate book. Yes, the Torah is a one book in its entirety, one authorship, one time was given to the Jewish people, to Moshe Rabbeinu at the very end of the 40 years in the desert. They got the entire Torah. But each book stands on its own. Each book is meant to be its own literary unit, so to speak, its own story, and to tell its own particular angle of the story of the Jews in the desert and the Jews for all eternity. And therefore, we find that the end of the Mishkan story, the story of the dedication of the tabernacle, which we spoke about so much at the end of Sefer Shemot, the book of Exodus, this story does not end only in Exodus. Part of the ending is in Exodus, part of the ending is in Leviticus, in Vayikra, and part of the end is in Numbers, is in Bamidbar. Each book has a different piece of the ending of this story. What do I mean? In Parashat Tetzaveh, toward the end of the book of Exodus, Shemot, you have the story of the dedication, the 7-day dedication of the altar. The altar is to be dedicated for 7 days. These are the clothes that are to be put on the Kohanim. These are the sacrifices that are to be offered. These are the things that must be sprinkled. For 7 days, Shivat Yamim Techaper al Mizbeach, 7 days you shall atone for the altar. And what is the purpose? When you bring these sacrifices, there will be the dwelling of God. You will know that God is the one who took you out of Egypt to dwell among you. And therefore, at the end of the book, the end of Pekudei, the end of Shemot, it says that the Mishkan was put up in the 1st of Nisan during that dedication ceremony, that dedication month. And the Vayichas Hanan et Ol Moed, the cloud of God's glory, descended upon the altar, on the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and Uchvod Hashem Malei et HaMishkan, the glory of God filled the tabernacle. So in Shemot, you have the dedication ceremony, the 7-day dedication ceremony. However, that's only the commandment about the 7-day dedication ceremony. It doesn't say the actual ceremony. That's found in Vayikra. That's found in Tzav and Shemini, the actual carrying out of that idea. What you do have at the end of Shemot is the idea that they put up the Mishkan, they constructed it, they put it in its place, and God's presence filled that tabernacle. In Leviticus, in Shemot, in Vayikra, you have the idea of the various karbanot, and then the 7-day dedication ceremony is carried out. It's not just commanded, it's not talked about. We have the actual story of the 7-day dedication. On the 8th day, they have a ceremony, and on the 8th day, there's a violation of the ceremony. The sons of Aaron, bring the wrong, strange fire. They are struck down with a fire. And with that, we have this new theme in Leviticus that you don't want to do certain things, you might die. If you come in the temple too often, if you come in drunk, you might die. Certain things that we just don't do. So, in Sefer Shemot, we have a description of the dedication, not the actual dedication. We have the dwelling of God's presence on a Mishkan which is constructed, but no actual offerings are offered. In Sefer Vayikra, the book of Vayikra, you have the actual dedication ceremony with the various offerings that they had, and the horrible story of what happened on the 8th day of the dedication. And then the book of Numbers. In the book of Numbers, you have the description of a 12-day dedication ceremony. The rabbis say after the 7-day dedication, they had put up the Mishkan, now a 12-day dedication ceremony in the month of Nisan, 12 days of Nisan. Then a dedication ceremony. Each one of the tribal heads, the Nesiim, need to come and give their gifts to the to the Mishkan. And God spoke to the Jewish people through this tabernacle when indeed all these offerings and gifts were given. So what's going on? Why? Part of the story, the commandment of the story, the beginning of the story in Shemot. In Vayikra, you have the discussion of a violation thereof and the actual giving of the sacrifices. And in Naso, in Sefer Bamidbar, you have the 12-day dedication ceremony with the Nesiim, the heads of the tribes, offering their offering. Why? It relates to the three themes of the three books. The theme of the book of Shemot is that God took us out of Egypt, l'shochni b'tocham, in order for the purpose of dwelling in our midst. As long as they had some sort of structure and God could dwell in their midst, that's enough. It's a book of success, taking out from Egypt and becoming God's people. We don't want to have a story of violation thereof. That's not what this book is about. It has a happy ending. The book of Vayikra is about adherence to the law. These are the sacrifices. This must be done. The Kohanim must preserve the exact laws of the Mishkan, not allow anyone to come into the wrong places, to do the wrong thing. The precision of the offerings must be exact. And therefore we learn about what happens when they don't adhere to it. We're warned about what not to do so that people won't die in the observance of this exact and very holy ceremony, which violation thereof is very dangerous for the individual. It's also a book of sacrifices, and therefore we have the actual offering of the actual sacrifices. But finally, Bamidbar is we're told about the dedication ceremony as part of the setting up of the camp. You see, it's not just a setting up a tabernacle, it's setting up a tabernacle in the midst of a camp. The camp is described in great detail, the 12 tribes surrounding the Mishkan. And therefore, it has a different purpose there. There, the purpose is to describe the setting up of the camps. And why the dedication ceremony of the 12 days of the Nesiim, of the elders of the community, of the leaders, the princes? Because this book is all about the participation of the Jewish people in the entry into the land of Israel. The Nesiim, the leaders of the people. We have another webcast describing how the leadership was set up and then failed, and then at the end of the book, it's restored, and with that they march on to the land of Israel. But a book all about the leaders describes the dedication ceremony in terms of the leaders. A book dedicated to the Jewish people setting up a camp around God and moving forward and marching forward describes the Mishkan in that context. Each book, its own purpose. But one might suggest something additional as well. I believe it was Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun who first made this point, is that there's an effort on the one hand for each book to be its own book. It has its own beginning, middle, and end. It has its own purpose, has its own angle on the story of the Jewish people. On the other hand, there's an effort by Hashem to unite the books, to put the books together. In all three books, these central books of the Torah, the dedication of the Mishkan is at the center. Because the main idea in the worship of God, in any ritual we perform, is l'shochni b'tocham, to have a connection with God. A mitzvah is a connecting piece with God. A religious life, the goal is to have God's presence in our midst. And therefore, in each one of these books, at the center, at some point there is a discussion of the dedication of the Mishkan, because we have to remember that's our founding institution. That's what we're all about, is trying to bring God into our midst. Thank you for joining us here today at the Anshe Sfar Beth El congregation for a discussion of Parashat Shemini. Join us each week for our further discussions. Thank you to Jason Lefkowitz for making today's presentation possible. And we learn throughout the year, Nishmas, in memory of my father of blessed memory, Baruch Reb Chaim Shmuel. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.